Welcome to Retrospective, ladies and gentlemen, where I talk about a game that I've played through and had some time with. And today we're going to be talking about a game that has become a legendary classic and the beginning of what many consider to be one of the greatest trilogies of superhero games ever made, Batman Arkham Asylum. This is my favorite entry in this trilogy, at least of the Rocksteady games. I still haven't played Origins, but a lot of people have found a new love for Origins in the midst of this series. But about Arkham Asylum, it was released in 2009, so as of the recording of this, it's March 14th, 2024, and it's at least 15 years old, or at least coming up on 15 years old, because the year prior was when I moved, and it's coming up on the 16th anniversary of that move, so do the math, this is 16 years old. Regardless, Arkham Asylum is, how would I describe it as far as genre? Well, it's a superhero game for one, but it's both a action and adventure game. You know, you solve puzzles, you do a little bit of platforming and maneuvering, but the main feature of this game is beating the snot out of bad guys in multiple creative ways. And I think that's really what put this game on the map, is because Batman feels nigh unstoppable in the way that he just absolutely beats enemies to a pulp. It is so insanely satisfying combat. It's a bit on the simplistic side, but not in a bad way. It kind of simplifies what you see in fighting games down to a few basic combos. Ones that are easy to pick up but difficult to master in the heat of a mob of enemies. This is a really fun game, but it's not without its flaws. I think some of its biggest flaws have to do with its introduction and some of the sections that you're forced to do when dealing with the Scarecrow in particular. The introduction to the game is very, very slow. You're basically walking the Joker to his containment, and it feels like it just goes on forever. And this is a trend that repeats itself throughout different segments of the game, where they just pull you out of gameplay to force you into a cutscene that you barely interact with. You know, the Scarecrow segments in particular are the ones that do this again and again and again, and it's one of the reasons I dread them. But they're not bad enough or long enough to keep me from wanting to play this game again. This game has a lot of replayability, arguably less than its sequels, Arkham City and Arkham Knight, but there's still a lot there. You can find the Riddler trophies, you can find the recordings. The recordings are some of the best parts of this game. You know, the patient interviews for Arkham Asylum with some of the most legendary of Batman's rogues galleries, and they're really well voice acted and really well performed. They feel very real and grounded. This creates a very spooky, very real atmosphere. This whole game's atmosphere is incredibly tense, incredibly eerie, you know, even outside of the Scarecrow stuff that's supposed to be eerie and scary. The atmosphere just feels... It makes you hate Arkham Asylum. It makes you hate the concept of this place. Even though Batman believes in it, it's just so twisted and corrupt, and you really see it as you roam the halls of this place. You see that even though they claim to be dedicated, it's more of experimentation on these patients rather than actually trying to help them. And I think that really shines through in this story, and when you look around the environment, it just feels old-fashioned and twisted, kind of the criticism that old-school mental asylums would have gotten. It really sums that whole thing up, and the whole origins of the founder and how he went insane and so on and so forth. Very fascinating stuff. But the gameplay itself and the story itself are really, really good. Seeing the Joker's plot unfold, seeing Mark Hamill's great Joker, and subsequently Kevin Conroy's Batman, you know, may he rest in peace, seeing them together again outside the animated series was fantastic, and I think it's one of the selling points of this trilogy, is because we get them in all three games. We get Arlene Sorkin's last performance, or at least as far as I'm aware, her last known performance as Harley Quinn. She has also since passed away, so may she rest in peace, and she was Harley Quinn. I cannot stand Tara Strong, but I will talk about that more in the Arkham City retrospective when I get around to doing that. But as far as Harley Quinn in this game, she's great. She's absolutely great. You know, they give her a little bit more sensuality with the character, which there was a little bit of that in the animated series, but they didn't really lean into it because it was a kid's show. But in this video game, you know, they kind of go a little bit further out with it, with that sort of nurse's outfit that she has, but she's still the same psychotic Harley Quinn. She's downplayed a little bit in some areas, if I'm to be critical, but as an overall, she succeeds at being an annoyance to Batman. And when you finally do beat her, it is a very satisfying experience. So, there you go. And again, wonderful performance by Arlene Sorkin. I think it's how you say her last name, Sorkin. Who, by the way, if you haven't looked into her, she is brilliant. May she rest in peace. She is absolutely brilliant. Brilliant comedian, brilliant actress, just brilliant all around. Incredibly underrated. She deserved a lot more credit than she got in her lifetime. Very tragic. But, back to the game at hand. I think the gameplay flows fairly smoothly, outside of the forced Scarecrow platforming segments, which I don't feel work incredibly well, but I'm sure there's some people who like them. The combat feels good, the movement around the Arkham Asylum grounds feels good. This isn't quite an open world game, it's sort of an open-ended, more linear experience, but there is the ability to backtrack and explore freely, and so there is a lot of open-endedness to it. It's not as open as Arkham City or Arkham Knight, but it's open-ended enough to where you don't feel utterly constrained by everything around you. Weirdly enough, the sequel to this game in some ways feels more constrained than the game that is not inherently open world in Arkham Asylum. It's very strange, but I really like the way that Batman moves in this game. It still feels a bit stiff. That's a complaint I have about all three of these games, is Batman feels very stiff and weighted. But it makes sense for his combat, at least. Just not for his movement. Like, running with him feels very cumbersome, but I guess it would with a costume like his, and I think that's what they're trying to emphasize. It's raining, so the rain's weighing down on the material of his cape and cowl, and, you know, that's the sort of thing. I mean, it's not raining all the time, but there's, like, you can see on the cover art, it's frequently raining and dark, and, you know, which is beautiful cover art, by the way. That's the original cover art for the original game. I mean, what more can be said about this? This is a 9 out of 10 game. It really is. I honestly can't wait. Once I'm done with Arkham Knight, I'm going to go through and play this one again. I'm working my way through all three games. I just beat City, and I've got multiple things to say about City, but I will save those for when I get to that game, because I've got a lot of mixed feelings on that. But I think this is... If you play any of this trilogy, maybe you're kind of reserved about playing it because you feel like, well, maybe it's a little bit overrated, maybe it's not as good as people are saying it is. This game certainly is. I can't say the same about Arkham Knight and Arkham City, or rather, in order, Arkham City and Arkham Knight, but I can definitely say that Arkham Asylum still holds up incredibly well today. I've heard some people say it's not. And to that I say, fair enough to you, but I severely disagree. This game holds up magnificently well. Just because the other games sort of improve on the combat does not mean that this is in any ways a bad game or a worse game to go back to. It is a lot of fun, and I really do like it, and I really like the environment that it creates. It's got a lot of iconic things, like the chimes for the loudspeaker for the asylum, and the sound of Batman's zipline, or grappling hook, rather. It's really just fun. Some of the things that the bad guys say when you're fighting them, it's great. It's absolutely great. It's a great atmosphere. It works as like an interactive Batman movie. If they had made this thing into a movie alongside the game, because I know they made a comic book, it would have done great. This was a great era of Batman, one of the last great eras of Batman before DC became utterly destroyed by cultural Marxists. This is a fantastic era, and it's no wonder that people are going back to it with the absolute failure that is the Suicide Squad games. They're going, or game rather. People are going back to this trilogy and rediscovering how much fun these games actually are, and they are fun. Despite some of the problems I might have with the later games, they are still fun. So definitely check this one out. It's a 9 out of 10. Wonderful, wonderful game. And I will see you guys in the next retrospective. Have a good one.